What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the top 5 finalist submissions for the Bricklink Designer Program Series 3. So without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome back, everybody, to a brand new video. Like I mentioned just quickly in the intro, we're going to take a look at the Bricklink Designer Program Series 3 finalists. This video was actually supposed to come out last week, but I wasn't feeling very well, and I just didn't really want to record a video being all sick and stuffy and all that stuff there, because otherwise I'll sound like Darth Vader or something like that. I don't know. I would just sound really bad, and I didn't really want to do that. Anyways, I digress. So before we get into this video, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the subscribe button with the bell notifications so you can be notified when I do upload a new video. As you can see right now, I'm really trying my best to make sure I'm doing once a week. So yeah, you'll know when my new videos drop. I try to post them on Saturdays, and we're just going to play around with the schedule and go from there. And last but not least, leave a comment down below. Let me know which of the top 5 finalists you actually enjoyed the most, or if there was another set that you think should have become a top 5 finalist, and we'll dive deep into that. But yeah, let's go. So before we do get started, these are the top 5 finalists. But before we talk about them, we'll kind of briefly scan through some of the other submissions that went in. I won't go into them in detail. I kind of briefly looked over them when I actually submitted my own model, so we'll eventually get to mine. But I think the main thing is, like, we'll just see if there was anything else that really catches our eye. And then we're going to talk about all 5 of these. The one that I think is really awesome is the one by Brickkester. I think that's how you say his name, because he actually won one. And if you actually go to Series 2, he was the one who made the brick cross train stage. The guy's a very talented builder. I think there was an interview done with him. Someone on YouTube I think it was an interview with him, and they talked about how he makes these builds, and it's honestly really cool to see. So what I'm blown away by is I think he talks about this one, and he did it in like just over a month. But either way, we're gonna go through and talk about a lot of these, because some of these I've actually seen. Like, I think this one was posted on Lego Ideas, so I think a lot of these are really fantastic builds. We're gonna kind of dive deep into them. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about before we do get into that, let's go ahead and just talk about the actual rules and how this actually works, and then briefly dive into some of the submissions that didn't get selected that maybe were actually really cool and whatnot. So the way this works is there's kind of multiple steps before you can actually officially get your model released under Bricklink/Lego, because technically Bricklink is owned by Lego, so like technically this is a Lego product. It's kind of weird, but like you don't get it in stores, but it's like through their service at the same time. So yeah, like they follow all the rules are pretty similar to Lego Ideas. But so once the palette gets released, usually in this case here, it's usually about a month and a half before the submission actually opens. I think for the January one, from my understanding, it's usually it's going to be around mid-January is where they open it, but again, it could be early January. I am working on another model, but I definitely do need to continue working on it, because I haven't had a chance to really dive deep into it. So I'm really happy for this new idea that I came up with, and there's gonna be actually more to this idea as well, which I'll share on a later date. But anyways, regardless of that, we'll get into that later on. But the main thing is the submission opens usually about 2 weeks to submit your model. They also recommend, if you actually join their seminar, I think they had one today, because I'm filming this on December 1st, and I'm probably posting this the next day, which is funny enough, just because I wasn't feeling well last week, so I didn't really get a chance to like go ahead and do these videos. But usually what they recommend is that you build your model way before, and then you use the submission period if they have comments. So when I submitted my cone idea, I had a small issue with one of the pieces. I didn't know you could do this, but I took a minifigure body and I took off the arms, and I just placed the minifigure body, and you can't actually do that, even though it doesn't say that you can't do that in the rules. So I had to switch that out for another piece. But other than that, it's pretty much like used to like verify your build to make sure it makes sense. I recommend, if you are going to compete in these competitions, that you have your build done for when submissions open, so that when you do submit it, if there is an issue with your build, you actually get time to work on it. And that's what I've done for the last 2 submissions, and both times I've always had something minor to fix, and it usually takes about 1 or 2 like business days before they get back to you. And if you only have 2 weeks, the time will chew up pretty fast. So it's just something to keep in mind. Yeah, so once you submit it, then they do the crowd support. I think it's the week later, where you can go in and vote. So you can go in here and press love it, like it, and then you can go ahead, and then they will review it for, I think it's like it's actually 4 weeks, and then from there they select their top 5. And that's kind of where we're at right now. What I am aware of, though, and for those of you who aren't necessarily aware of it, it's based off of how many pieces your build is. So they kind of segregate it. So if you have a smaller build, like you'd compete with smaller builds versus a medium build versus a larger build, because they try to have pieces on all ranges. So for example, like if you look at the camping adventure, I'm pretty sure this is like under 1,000 pieces. Yeah, so it's only 643, whereas if you go to like Lost Day, I'm pretty sure this is like 3,000 pieces. Yeah. So you're kind of, what they want to do is like, and I think this one's only like 1,700 or 2,000. So what they try to do is like select builds from all different ranges. So you're not necessarily competing with everybody. You're almost competing with like a category. That being said, though, it's like, that's what they strive for. And and they actually talk about it in their webinars, is like they don't just want to submit 5 pieces of 4,000 pieces because it costs a lot of money to manufacture these. So they want to have a wide range of builds for different price sets, which is when you are submitting something, you should consider that. Like my build I submitted for this one, I think it was only like 1,500 pieces. So I would be competing with maybe like the Harbor Master, or yeah, so I'd be competing with like Art of Chocolate, Harbor Master, because I'm in that piece range almost. So it's just something to think about when you are doing your designs. And then once I guess all 5 are announced, they do like they collaborate with the designers, they kind of finalize the designs. Wow, that's actually a while. It takes like almost 9 months to do it. And then this is where the big part comes in, is like once the designs are like good to go, everyone's like kind of happy with it from Bricklink's perspective, that's when they do the crowdfunding. And that's where it's like you need to receive, you know, a minimum of 3,000 pre-orders. So it's a great way to support some of these creators. So like if you really like the Art of Chocolate, which I think is really cool, and I'm debating getting this one, you go in and you support it and you make sure that like basically say you want to buy this. And so it gives these guys a chance to actually have their set become official. But it takes a while. Like you can see, like this was submitted back in November 2023, and like they probably won't start shipping this until 2025. Like you're looking at a year and a half until something actually happens. So, but yeah, that's basically a summarized version. I know that was a little bit longer than I wanted to be, but we're going to go into a little bit more detail, more of the sets. But in general, if you didn't know how this works, and they kind of repeat this process for all of it. So just because you do win, it takes like a long time before it actually ends up happening. Yeah. And I think right now too, I don't know where series 1 is. Yeah. See, crowdfunding's coming up for series 1. So if you like any of these sets, like this is a great opportunity to go in there and actually like individuals. We'll go through really quickly. I'm not going to go into super lot of detail because there's like 180 different sets, but we'll kind of briefly talk about some ones that I think are really interesting. And if you are watching this video and you are one of these creators, I think that's really cool. Like this hardware store looks really interesting. I love how people love pushing the modular buildings, but in my opinion, I think they're outside of like, if you're going to compete with, this is my own opinion, I think that if you're going to submit a modular building, submit it in Bricklink, don't submit it in Lego Ideas, because Lego Ideas has never selected a modular building. And there's some incredible buildings out there. And I think the reason why is because they have their own in-house team and they have their own way of doing things. So they're not going to want to, they want something original that isn't something that their own in-house team can do. So if you do have something like this, submit it in Bricklink. Don't submit it in Lego Ideas, because you have a better chance of actually succeeding with this. So that's just my own 2 cents. But again, it's like this is another one too, really nice. I definitely think it would have been nice if it's too symmetrical almost. I feel like you could add a little bit more depth to some of the pieces, but to each their own. You might look at mine, which is right here, and be like, it sucks, but it is what it is. So what I will do is, so this is the cone. This is the one that I created. If you do end up, if you actually, number one, if you did vote for it, thank you very much. I very much appreciate it. I will be doing a separate video about this one and talk about how I actually built this one, because I don't want to spend the whole video on this one talking about this. Like probably in the next couple weeks, you'll see a walkthrough video of this one. And honestly, I'll probably end up submitting it through Lego Ideas as well, because I genuinely really like this build. And I think I had a lot of fun building it, and I'll explain all the details about it. But if you did vote for it, this was my build. It was called the Cone. It was just a small local ice cream shop. It was based off a mom and pop style shop. So we'll talk about this on another video. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but yeah, like there's a lot of these cool ones. The one I've always thought it was interesting is these trains. If there's one thing that I'm more impressed about, like I think the guy who came up with the Orient Express that just came out on Lego, he actually built the train. Where I'm always intrigued by is how people can build the trains on like stud.io. I don't know what it is. I just find when you're doing a lot of mechanical movements on that software, it's very confusing and you can't always tell if it's like working or not, because like unless I'm missing something and there's another feature that I'm unaware of, but at the moment, like I don't even know how you would test to make sure that the train is actually functional and moving and doesn't interfere with other parts and what are meant to be. And so I could just be maybe I've never really tried it, but it's just something that I've always thought of. Like I actually am very impressed that you're able to create a train that actually works in stud.io. So I think it's something that Lego should look at doing, is having more of a mechanical side to things. But again, I could be completely wrong and maybe just have no idea how to properly use it. But again, I'm not an expert at stud.io yet, but I'm still working through all those little things. But either way, this one was really cool. I really like this botanical garden. My only criticism on it was I understand you want to use the same color throughout like the whole piece. I thought it would have been really cool if you had different shades of it, but other than that, I really did like this one. This one did catch my eye when I was going through it. Like again, these Main Street ones, this gives me like a New York style vibe, which I think is really cool. Nice interior for a hospital. I do like the fact that you're able to maximize the space on something like this. That is really cool. I don't know what this is. Dogo Onsen Bathhouse. Must be some like kind of Japanese style. I think that's pretty cool. The Lions Tournament. Again, I'm just gonna kind of briefly go through all these just because there are a lot of them. So there were some that I remember kind of going through that I did enjoy. I'll talk about them. But I think the main thing is like if you are gonna be submitting through any of these kinds of through these competitions, just keep in mind that like just keep in mind actually a couple things. Number one is that I think you have more versatility on what you want to create when you submit to Bricklink because there's not as many restrictions as like Lego Ideas has. Even though they don't say it, there are definitely a lot of restrictions. I also think that like when you are creating a build, don't feel like you have to create a 4,000 piece build. You can create a 600 piece build and still win. I think it just comes down to how do you maximize your space, and I think that's the most important thing. Like I really love this modern house. I'm pretty sure this one got 10,000 supporters on Lego Ideas, and I'm blown away that they did not take this because in my opinion, this is a Lego Ideas worthy thing. I don't know what may have missed about it, but I really like this one. I could be wrong. Maybe it didn't make the 10,000, but I could look them up sometime later on. But either way, really like this one a lot. So if you are Let's Go Lego Brick, fantastic name. This one too, actually, I think is also on Lego Ideas. And the reason why is I'm mostly on Lego Ideas. I don't always come on Bricklink, so I see a lot of these. Really cool, interesting one. I can understand why they didn't take this one because they just did one, which is completely understandable. I think in the series 1, they did like a Western style bank. So, and I think that's another thing too, is like it's hard to come up with super original ideas. So you have to consider like what have they already submitted? What has Bricklink already released? What are people most likely going to buy as well? And the other thing you have to keep in mind too is like I think if you have anything with intellectual property, if they don't get a license for it, you're not going to be able to actually get that build, right? So if you create something that's like, I don't know, something on the Disney Channel that's like, let's say Pinocchio, you know, you build Pinocchio's house and it needs a license for that. I understand that Lego has a Disney license, so it might be a little bit different, but it's something to keep in mind because I am aware, and I did some research about this, a lot of Lego Ideas sets that like when they were submitted, they didn't make it because of a licensing issue. And they actually explain that in the actual like guidelines where like, yes, like they try to tell you, they kind of hinted to stay away from intellectual property, but if you end up taking one, it's kind of like a risk. Like they might love your build, but they can't get a license for it and they can't sell it off of, they can't sell your Lego set and like in any way. And so you're not going to actually win. And that's the only downside. So in my opinion, I try to stay away from intellectual property. I try to stay more towards like, if you're going to create something or you're going to mimic something, don't reference anything in there. You might create the same house that Pinocchio lived in, but you're not going to reference it. You can just call it something else. I don't know if that's really plagiarism or cheating in that sense, but at the end of the day, it's your own intellectual idea. Like everyone's inspired by other things, but I think at the same time, you're not tying it to that intellectual property. So something to keep in mind. Another thing too to keep in mind is looking at previous submissions that have won. What I have noticed is Bricklink really likes the train ideas. Like this is actually a really nice train. I think if you go back to series 1, I think they had one that won. Let's just kind of, they really like the train. So maybe in the next mission, if you do go with the train idea, they may not take it. They may want to look for something else. Like I like these little ones here. I think this is interesting. Like this kind of Gardens of the Lost Treasure, like these interesting displays. That would be cool. I think if someone made like a more of a display or like a scenery, that could be something that, you know, you could potentially win. So if you are watching this and you're thinking of doing a display, I haven't really seen anything like that that's really won. And I'm not talking about like you know, kind of like a standalone piece, like you know, these here. Like this is not a, I guess this is almost like a scene, the camping one. I'm talking like an actual, like, you know, I like to use Star Wars as a reference, where if you take like the Battle of Geonosis, that one's the most common one used, and you take like a scene and you build the scene for someone, I think that would be really interesting how you come up with that. And that could be something that it doesn't need to be like, it's not necessarily related to another intellectual property piece, but it's more so based off of like a story that you're telling. So I really like this one. This is actually really nice. I know I wasn't saying I was going to click on them, but I love that waterfall detail. That's really nice, actually. Very well done, whoever was this one. Very nice job. Another thing too I have noticed is if you are going to submit to these, I will say a thumbnail is very important. You have, I am very like, when I see these builds and they have thumbnails and they have like an introduction or they show all the pieces to it, I'm more captivated by it. And I just think it's something just to keep in mind. So if you're gonna post one of these, like, yes, this is great that you're gonna post like just your piece here, have a cool background, but make a thumbnail out of it. Make people want to come to it. Like that's what I did for mine, and it was a way for me to get people's attention. At least I don't know if it worked or not, but either way, like, you know, like this is really nice here, like how they break it down on the second image. Something I actually did wrong, and I didn't think about this, was I should have done the second image where I show the breakdown of it and talk a little bit more about it. So for next next time I'm gonna probably do, just so when you go over you can see it. So that's actually really nice. I like this biplane. See, like this is interesting. I like these little display things where I growing up I had a lot of these like not Lego, but I had a lot of these like model planes. They're literally just that. They're just like a metallic plane. It sits on a stand. Like that's another idea where I could see being pretty interesting and people actually end up liking it or maybe wanting to use it. But a lot of modular buildings in the end, definitely some really cool ones. But I think at the end of the day, I think what you should definitely consider, and I know it's funny because I'm giving you advice and I've never actually won anything, and that's totally fine. I just completely my opinion. You can completely disagree with me or not. I definitely think that you have to consider a lot of things. Is number one, where are you submitting your submission to? Is it Lego Ideas? Is it Bricklink? Is it somewhere else? Number two, looking at past winners is important. So if you're gonna make something Western style, maybe don't, for example, make the Wild West General Store. Come up with a different twist on it. For example, another one too, like look, we have the old train station in Series 1. In Series 2, we have another train, and then a Bricklink train station. So in Series 3, I think you're actually at a disadvantage if you use a train theme. Whereas like this dock theme, like I don't think there was really anything like there's a beach house. Yeah, like these are a little bit different. You know, you got like a castle here. So it's something just to keep in mind. Like what were the previous submissions? Like how can you stand out differently? Like this Art of Chocolate, I think is very, very original. I really like this Lost City one too, because they're very different builds and they really stand out and similar to the previous submission. So if you're going to make a submission for Series 4, maybe try to stay away. Again, you can do this. This is completely my opinion. I want to make this telling you what to do in any way. This is 100% my opinion, but I would think you would have a better chance if you were to do, if maybe stay away from the train theme because there's 2 have already been completed, and maybe save that for Series 5. Don't save it for Series 4. Maybe for Series 4, you know, you go ahead and you do like a construction site or something. Do something where like the theme hasn't been completed yet. So from Bricklink's perspective, like, oh, I can introduce this as a new idea. So, and that's something that I'm trying to do differently. Like my theme, my build that I'm not going to share obviously because I'm still working on it. My theme is actually completely different and no one has actually done it yet. So I hope that it can make an impact and I hope I can deliver it so that the details are there. Anyways, that was a really big rant. I understand that this video has been going on for a little bit too long. Either way, I'm just gonna continue talking about this. One's gonna be a little bit of a longer video. I know I told you I was gonna talk about mostly these sets here, but I ended up kind of going through and maybe ranting just a little bit too much. So we're gonna go through each individual one. We'll start with the camping site. We'll just talk about this briefly. I know the whole point of this video is to talk about these, but I ended up just going on a rant about the whole series. But either way, let's just continue to talk about this in the end. For me, the one thing I love the most about, and this is a compliment to all 5 builds, and I think this is what makes or break a build, and this is something that I try to thrive for, is how do you fill up your space? How do you make it so that you have enough detail in every corner of your piece, but also not that it's overcrowded? And I think that's the most important thing, is it allows you to tell your story. Like for me, absolutely love the tree. The reason why is because the colors of the leaves personally make it a camping trip. I'm thinking of this as like not in the middle of the summer. I'm thinking like a fall camping trip. You're roasting marshmallows, whatever it may end up being. It's simple, it's a scene, and I'm enjoying it. It's not necessarily that it's like the most overly detailed, like I guess in this case here it's overly detailed, but like I meant to say like more like the actual area is not the most overly detailed thing, but at least it creates a scene where you go there and you get this warm campfire feel. I have never seen anything like this before, and that's what I'm talking about earlier on, like where, and like this is actually an idea I might end up doing too, is like building scenes is actually very good too. It tells its own story in that own area. It's more than just a build, like building a building. You're building a scenery so that when I or someone goes and watches this or looks at this, you have a connection to it. You know, this might remind you of something that you were doing when you were younger, or you might have a camp that looks similar to that. So the one interesting thing I thought was which I don't know if it was a good or bad idea, is you notice that he just has the camper. He doesn't actually have the car that goes with it. Personally, I wonder if he actually built the car and thought maybe it was too crowded because the car might take up too much of a spot. But you know, I don't know, like maybe that's something that's an interesting one, or maybe he should have had just the tailgate piece and could have had the car on the side, and maybe he didn't want to do that because the space was already filled up enough. But I'm curious to see why he maybe didn't add a car. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, or I'm not saying it's a good thing, but I'm curious to see if he considered that or just wanted to have it as the camper, the piece at the bottom here to connect it, but he doesn't actually have like the actual additional car that goes with it. So yeah, this was the camping adventure. I think it was a really, really interesting design. He had different, like you see, so you can see, I wonder if these different improvements actually included like the revision. So they submitted the first batch of it and then came back and had to redesign a couple things. So again, that's where like that 2-week period is very important. Like you want to submit it right away at the beginning because they will come back with comments. I think everyone who submitted something that I've heard of and talked to has had at least one small comment come back, and it's usually just like, hey, remove this color leaf, put it somewhere else, or whatever it may end up being, because they don't like where it is, or hey, fix your instructions. So really like this camping adventure. I don't know personally if I would necessarily buy it. It could be, it's interesting. It's compared to the other builds, it's like probably ranked 3 for me, and I think we'll go through and we'll rank them all, but we'll see. Maybe. I'm thinking about it. Lost City, number 2. I think this is really cool. I really love the detail. The Lost City, what I really like about this one, it's a little bit of Indiana Jones theme. I think the details on how you complement all the green, the blues, you know, whatever it may, all those, like just the theme of it, the green theme is so well done for me, and that's why I'm not even surprised this one got selected. For me, the fact that you're able to use multiple different color palettes of green, or really the green color palette, and utilize it properly, and it actually complements the rest of the build, 10 on 10. And I that's why I don't have any other comment other than like, this is something that's really cool. I would definitely add something like this in a Lego city as like an ancient ruin, like you're in a forest, you create like a forest scene and then you surround the forest with this. I just think it's absolutely unbelievable, and I think that this is a really cool build. And personally, I think this one was in the Lego ideas. I'm surprised it didn't get selected because this is a really original build. Going on to the next one, not the boat, sorry, what's it called? The Harbor Master Office. What I think is interesting about this one, what I like about this one the most is the boat part. I like the fact, and I wonder if there's a zoom in on it, like how it kind of, they show like the underwater part of it. Like I like how it's an elevated platform, and they also elevate the boat at the same time. I like that little bits of detail to it. I think everything else is really well done too. I think it's similar to the Lego Ideas fishing store that they've already done in the past, but more modernized. Like this is something you would find, like I live in Canada, so like you probably find this somewhere in like in Vancouver, or in somewhere in the Atlantic coast. So it's like more modernized, which I think is not bad. Like it's more like something that you would refurbish. Like you would refurbish the old fishing, I think it's called the fishing shop or whatever it's called, from Lego Ideas, and you would create like this one. I think that's an interesting take on it. The one thing that I am not necessarily a fan of is the octane gas signs everywhere. I don't know why, but I keep looking at it and it's like I wish they put something else other than that. I don't know why. Like I think it makes it too Lego City. This is not supposed to be Lego City. This is supposed to be your creation. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually remove the octane gas symbols. When they do, I wouldn't be surprised if in 2025 when they're doing crowdfunding, like this is not here. That's my prediction. I think they're gonna actually end up removing it, and then they'll just make it like an own original sign, because I think like it should be like, I don't see why you like, this is not Lego City. You should have grown, like just write gas station or something like that. Make your own design. Like don't take Lego's sticker just and throw it on just to make it like that. But that's just me being critical. Other than that, I think it's really well done in the end. On to the next one, number 4, the Forest Stronghold. I've never really been a big fan of like the castle series necessarily. I do like the fact that it's got a lot of detail. It tells a story, and I think that's why this one made it, because it's a very playful. You're not building this one just to really, like, I guess you could keep it in your city, but for me, it's very playful. Like I like the fact that every little component here is playable, and I think that's the big difference between all the other sets. Like yes, the camping ground, it's got its own scene, but like this one here, you build this one set and you play with the whole set. The other ones, it's kind of like you add them to another part of your city that you want to build, or add them to your collection. This one's its own standalone play piece, and I understand why it ended up winning in the end. I'm not necessarily a big castle fan, but I definitely think it's a really cool build. My main thing is, again, like I said before, I like that everything's accessible. He didn't close it off, and I think that's what's important. He made every single area accessible, and I think that's what's really well done about it. It's the only one that really has that kind of play feature that goes with it. Last but not least, I think this one's going to end up being my favorite. I think a lot of people like this artist. Like I think it's Brick Esther. I don't know how to say it. Probably say your name. If I said it wrong, or Brickester, whatever it may end up being, I apologize. But the one piece that I think really stood out for me is how you utilize the rounded corners. There's one thing to make the rounded tops or like have rounded pieces, but the fact that you created flow with the actual bottom and you utilized all the space, and you didn't make it so it's like just a square base, you created more of a rounded piece, I think is really stood out for me. Like it creates a more flow to the overall build. I really like this image. Actually stuck out to me too, because it's like, number one, and this is what I was talking about before with the thumbnail, like number one, thumbnail is amazing, probably like the best one out of all the ones I've seen so far. Like really well done. And honestly, when I was building my thumbnail, I was referencing some of his old ones. I think I referenced his cross station one when I was building mine. But for me, when you open, I didn't even realize, I thought this was just gonna be a standalone build, and it was gonna be like you open up from the top, but the fact that you're opening up from the back, and now you get a whole play feature. So you're basically taking the Forest Stronghold and you're taking a modular builder and you're mixing it together. And for me, this is why this is the number one piece, is because I think the thing that people forget to realize about Lego is Lego has a play playability function. Yes, you want to add it into a city. Yes, you want to add it into your own builds and you just want to let it sit there. But people also buy Lego to play with Lego. It's not just about letting it sit there and enjoying it and let it gather dust or whatever you want to say. I think Brickester actually goes ahead and puts this together and says, listen, I can, number one, make it something that you put in your city. But number two, if you just want this as a standalone or just to add it with your other, Winter Village style sets, you can now play with it. And from there, you go through and you talk about how, you've got a complete set that can be for your Lego building, or you can go ahead and actually play with each interior piece. You got like, I guess, a chocolate bakery on one level. You've got like a kitchen area where I guess you can go in and eat stuff. I don't know, what does it say over here? There's roasting, grinding, and mixing, molding. Like there's a whole like theme and there's a whole setup and sequence, I guess, for making the chocolate in this case. So for me, the main thing I like the most is the fact that you can open this piece and actually play with it. And I think that that's a whole other level of detail that people also forget. Yes, it's easy to go in and just take the top layer off. Everyone's done that before. How do you take a modular building and make it different than it was originally? Maybe on another building, someone might take out the middle piece of it and then now you can play with it on the inside. Could be an idea. But I think being able to, number one, have incredible amounts of detail, which is what number one brings him to this part, which is what everyone else has too, an incredible amount of detail. But now instead of just doing your typical takes off the roof, you're able to open up the back and almost have the same feel of the forest stronghold, right? Like for example, when you look at Lost City is a standalone piece. You play with it on the inside, but for me, I like it as more of a standalone piece. Whereas like the Harbor Master, yes, you can remove it, but realistically, you're not going to. Everyone has these modular sets. You don't really remove the tops as much as you say you want to. You don't really end up doing that in the end. But when you actually look at how Brickester actually, opens up the piece in the end, I think that it, in my opinion, and we're going to talk about this up next, is it creates the top. It is for me, it makes sense why it's a top 5 piece. So last but not least, and I know this has been a really bit of a long video and a little bit of a rant, but I think, again, this is a little bit of a makeup from not being able to post this last week, and I just want to talk about it and really say a big congratulations to all of these finalists. I think they did an absolutely incredible job. I'm a really big fan of all of them. I'm going to go ahead and rate all of these. So starting at number 1, or actually, we won't start number 1. We'll start at number 5. It's the Forest Stronghold. And the only reason why is I'm not a big castle fan. Personally, I've never really been that, and that's only my own personal opinion. This is still an incredible build. I love the playability function. I actually think if the Forest Stronghold was more like the Lost City, where it was more of like its own piece, it wouldn't have actually won. I think what really made this one sit in the top 5 for me is the fact that all the areas are accessible. Number 4 for me, it's a little bit of a tough one. I'm gonna have to go the Harbor Master office. And the only reason why is it's a more modern feel to it. It's a more modern like style. I don't have necessarily anything negative to say about it, but looking at the other 3 builds, I was more impressed about how they utilize the space a little bit more. I was just more disappointed. Again, I know this is me being very nitpicky, but again, you're talking about the top 5. I'm more disappointed about like the fact that he used the octane gas symbol. Like, you have an opportunity here to really differentiate yourself from Lego. Use that. Yes, you may top 5. I can guarantee you, and I'll bet on this, that they will remove that sticker. And it's just there because you're allowed to have it because it's octane, but I think it should be your own sticker. I think you should go in there and design it yourself and show like this is, the Harbor Master shop or whatever may end up being, because that's what it should be, the office space or whatever may end up being in the end. So that's my number 4. Number 3 is Camping Adventure. It's a small, simple piece. I would have liked to see if you actually end up coming up with a car. I like the fact that you utilize the space in it. It's a small build, it does a really good job in the end. I don't really have much details other than that. I think the main thing for me is like you just utilize your space really well, similar to what you do with the Harbor Master. Again, these are not I'm not discrediting any of these builds. I'm just giving you my honest top 5 opinion just by going through all these. But the Camping Adventure, I think my favorite part was the tree. Whereas, like, for example, sorry, I forgot to say, for the Harbor Master, my favorite part was how you elevated the boat and had the details underneath. Really like that detail. And then, yeah, for Camping Trick, I really like the tree. I really love the feel of that camping feeling when you're there. And then finally the last 2, number 2 is Lost City for me. I adore the green color palette that you use. There's one thing this is a good example. He built basically the Forest Stronghold, and you can tell here how he used just a basic green color, but he takes the same colors, same gray Forest Stronghold, and accentuates every single element of it by using the green and he uses like the different kinds of greens, the blues, the dark greens, the light blues, whatever you want to call it, and really creates more color than than you would have really originally anticipated. And big fan of that. I think it's very creative and a very, you know, well done job. And then last but not least, I've said this, I think I've ranted like so much about it. I'm not going to go into much detail because I already talked about it, but the art of chocolate. There's one thing to create a modular building. There's one thing to create a playability function in your modular building, but there's another thing to take all those details and elevate your game. I think that you did an amazing job. I was a big fan of your crisscross station, whatever it was called, and central cross. You know what I'm talking about from series 2. You took that and you elevated it again. I love the detail. I think it's a perfect timing too. Like I think you actually positioned this properly too. Like you're talking about adding this. You brought this in at a perfect time. We're going into the winter. Everyone wants to build this. At the end of the day, I think when does crowdfunding start? Like in October of next year. So realistically, you're the timing's pretty well on it. I know this was a little bit of a longer video. I'll try to go ahead and cut this up a little bit so it's not me going on a rant forever. But at the end of the day, these are some absolutely incredible builds. You're gonna see later on. I'm gonna be posting my own walkthrough video of how I built the cone. I'm not really sure when I'm gonna end up filming or recording that, whatever it may end up being. But make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Turn the bell notifications icons on, and most importantly, leave a comment down below. Tell me which one did you like in the end. Was there, and I said this before in the beginning of the video, did you like any of the top 5? Do you think something should have been substituted in for one of the top 5? You know, in the end, did you agree with my top 5 ranking from 1 to 5 in the end? If you didn't, tell me what you thought. Let's have a discussion about this. I think it's what makes it a lot of fun. And so yeah, let me know down below in the comments. And yeah, and that kind of concludes this whole thing. I hope you did enjoy this video. Make sure you hit one of these 2 videos on the side, hit the subscribe button, and most importantly, I will see you guys in the next one. So see ya.